We are at Happy Market Research today. Thanks very much for joining us. I am live at SurveyMonkey. Morgan, thank you very much for hosting me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for having me on the show.
Morgan Molnar, I believe I got the name right.
Yes.
Responsible for leading marketing for SurveyMonkey Audience.
Yes.
Yep. SurveyMonkey is established in 1999. They are a global leading survey and consumer platform, a sampling platform, for marketing research based in San Mateo, California, with over 17 million active users.
Yes.
Which I mean, that puts you in first place, I think, from an active user perspective in the space.
I would assume so. I
Yeah.
don't know. I haven't fact checked that, but yeah, it's a lot of users.
No, I mean, it's absolutely, it's a massive amount of users. So prior to joining SurveyMonkey, you maintained leadership roles at both Nielsen and Procter and Gamble in marketing.
Yeah, so it was at Nielsen.
Or Nielsen, sorry.
Yeah, I was at Nielsen focusing with my main client being Procter and Gamble. So
Got it.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Okay, good. So you can fact check that
Yeah.
then. Before we kind of dive in talking about SurveyMonkey, I'd really like to set some context for the audience. Maybe you
Sure.
could tell us, Morgan, a little bit about your background, your parents, what they did, and how that's informed what you're doing today.
Sure. So I was born in Maryland, grew up in Avon, Connecticut, outside of Hartford. My parents, it's so fun to talk about because it was not the typical upbringing. My mother was the breadwinner. She was a career-long businesswoman in sales and marketing, so apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah.
So she led sales and marketing for various companies, mostly in marketing services and technology. So, and even had a CEO post for over 5 years. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So she was definitely an inspiration from a career standpoint. And then my father was pharmaceutical sales by day, but actor by night. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, for a lot of my childhood, where my mom was focusing on her career, he was a stay-at-home dad and, pursuing his passion for acting, which was really fun too.
Yeah, it sounds like a hand in glove for your parents.
Yeah, and I did a lot of acting with my father as a child too, so have a little bit of a knack for performing in me as well, which is probably why I love the conference circuit and
totally.
going on shows like this. So.
Are you, have you done much like improv, or is it just theater?
Oh my gosh, no. But I would love to. And it's funny you say that. I was actually at a barbecue for Labor Day just a couple weekends ago and was asking friends about improv because there was someone there who was doing it. And I was like, I got to get into that. It's so for me. But no, just more acting here and there. Mostly when I was younger, I did a little in grad school. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do when I grew up, I didn't really think about marketing or business. I was actually much more interested in science. And so I actually applied to colleges as a physics major and very quickly decided that wasn't for me. But, at the time I was thinking I would be a professor or just, really fascinated with the way that the world around us works. And I think that's what drew me to market research. It's a little bit more of it's a less technical application of science like physics, but it's still that, how do you figure out the psychology of consumers? How do you think, figure out the way that people think or feel or react or behave, and then marketing is that extension of how do you actually make decisions off of that knowledge.
And coming from a more of a quant background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marketing measured has better ROI, just because you're continually improving both the velocity and the subsequent return. The problem, though, the tension I think that exists there is, we start losing the traction or the justification for the creative part of marketing. Right. So you've got,
Sure.
Yeah, you've got that. How do you guys manage that kind of, okay, I'm measuring this, I get it, my cost per acquisition is X, yada, yada, yada. But then, kind of like going all in on big bets relative to creative campaigns.
Yeah. So my function technically is product marketing, but I work really closely with our growth marketing partners. And part of it is around goaling, and part of it is around really setting aside budget and resources for those big creative campaigns. So for example, you mentioned we were founded in 1999. Mm-hmm. We are this month celebrating our 20th anniversary.
Yeah, congratulations.
So, thank you. I have not been at SurveyMonkey for 20 years, but,
no, but still,
yeah,
that's a big
about
deal.
A quarter of that.
Yeah.
So what we are doing is a big splash campaign around that, which isn't really to drive any specific business goal, but more awareness. And getting people involved in the brand.
Yeah.
And so you set aside, for things like that. And where I focus my time on audience, which is our market research panel, when we think about marketing, we definitely segment, okay, this is a bucket of money that's meant for awareness, and the goaling there is more around impressions and the right target. And then if we have more direct response marketing, then you're looking at conversions and click-throughs and all of that.
When you think about the relative spend, and like you said, you have a growth team, which is it's been interesting. Like Airbnb is a good example of a company that, they started lean, and then it started getting traction, and I don't even know how many. It's got to be well over 100 people now, I think, in their growth team, right? So I'm really curious about this. Does the growth team sit as like this group of ninjas that just kind of like analyzes every aspect of the business, or are they more compartmentalized relative to the business lines?
A little bit of both. So we have two growth teams at SurveyMonkey. There's a product growth team and a marketing growth team, and they work very closely together. Mm-hmm. But even the marketing side, we've got folks who are focusing more on engagement versus then working on digital advertising and acquisition. Yeah. And so even with that distinction, you've got people working on different parts of the customer journey and funnel. Yeah. And then, once marketing kind of hands it off to product, then, we're working really closely with those partners as well. I'd say we run lean as well, but there is definitely a big focus on growth here at SurveyMonkey.
When you think about the other part of it that's interesting is this attention that companies are now paying towards different social good, and even beyond that, even more sometimes polarizing subjects, right? I mean, Nike being one of the quintessential brands, but then, SurveyMonkey, of course, changing your logo during Gay Pride, or that was.
We definitely have a big focus on corporate social responsibility. We've launched an entire division called SurveyMonkey for Good, which focuses on a lot of different initiatives, either local in the community or national. And part of that is also our SurveyMonkey Contribute program. So that's actually one of our main panel sources in the United States is SurveyMonkey Contribute, and that's our unique proprietary panel sourced from the 2 million folks taking surveys on SurveyMonkey every day. And what we do is a pretty unique model where it's all charitable incentives. And so what's really great, and I'm really proud of that program for, is we've donated over $15 million to charitable organizations in the U.S. since opening that. So yeah, I think we definitely have a strong focus there. One of our core business values and company values is prioritize health, but that's not just personal health, it's also community health. So we definitely focus there.
So by community health, you mean at a global level, or?
Part of it is just, how are we giving back to the communities that we're in? We have global offices, and for example,
community where you guys are located.
Where we're located, yeah. And even coming up in early October, we're doing a week of service where there's opportunities in all of the communities around all of our global offices to participate in some charitable work or volunteering activity. Yeah,
the tension has always been like this. You have maximum shareholder for value, or maximize shareholder value is been historically the mantra of especially publicly traded companies. But I think most companies. This altruistic perspective lends it's almost this unmeasurable ROI, right? And that's kind of getting to the point of you have these investment dollars that are being made at the corporate level now that are funding things that aren't necessarily attributable to a revenue line, right? But they're doing other things. Maybe it's retention of staff or.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, part of it is, getting SurveyMonkey out there in the community. It's giving back to organizations by offering, usage of our platform. It's getting our employees engaged in the community. And I think that there's a lot of benefits that are maybe not monetary.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just curious. So when growing up, your father was the primary caregiver, it sounds like. Did you guys do things like rescue mission or anything like that, service related, or was that part of the, or did that develop later in life?
It developed later for me. We were active in the community from a theater standpoint. So
that's kind of giving back.
Giving art to the community, yes.
I would argue that could be it, yeah.
Yeah, so for me it was a little bit later in life, but that definitely heavily involved with SurveyMonkey and outside in other organizations in the Bay Area too.
That's awesome. It's kind of like following our normal roadmap, which it's allowed me to get to know guests in a different way. It's kind of like, I call it the over a beer kind of a way, even though that's not part of the,
over a coffee.
It's a little too early this morning for that. Tell me about one of the biggest challenges and how you overcame that.
Yeah. For me, what comes to mind is actually right before I started my role here at SurveyMonkey. I was living in New York, working at Nielsen. I was doing the New York to Connecticut headquarters commute, which was fine at the time. But my husband he was my boyfriend at the time, wasn't thrilled with his job, was looking around and got an amazing opportunity here in the Bay Area. So born and raised East Coast, never had been to California.
A big cultural shift.
Yeah. And so that was a crazy couple of months in early 2014. We got engaged in January. He got the job in February. We moved out to California in March.
And that was 14.
2014. And Nielsen was great. They let me work from home. It was a very flexible role. My client was in Cincinnati, so I was already remote for them. So that was great. But, I moved across the country where I had really little support network, didn't really know anyone, was in a job that I was working from home, so I wasn't going into an office, meeting coworkers. And I just realized that it wasn't for me. I wasn't in a great place. I was like, I need to get out there more. And actually what pulled me out of it.
Because you were working from home too, so it's like this whole isolation.
Right, a completely new place, didn't know anyone, and was kind of stuck in an apartment all day. Yeah, which, I mean, there are worse things, right? I was in sunny California.
Totally. Yeah. But still, it's...
But yeah, for me, spending, my 8-hour workday without anyone, it was challenging. So what actually pulled me out of it was finding SurveyMonkey. So I was part of our Contribute panel, actually.
Oh, you're kidding.
And I got a survey invitation email and saw the Palo Alto address in the footer and was like, I should check those guys out. And the rest is kind of history. But yeah, that was, for me, I realized I need an office. I need a, fast-paced environment. I need coworkers to stimulate me throughout the day. And I definitely found that here.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I the darkest point, I've had a couple of things in my life that it didn't go great, right? But the darkest point for me was after I exited Focus Vision, because I had a team of people, right? And I was around all this kind of enthusiasm and driving and taking the hill. And I think it's challenges and it's difficult, but same, there's people. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like in my little home office for days on end, I'm like, I just started losing the will to live, not in a literal sense, but it was just really tired.
I understand that. Like my husband would come home and be like, tired from a day of work, wanting to put his feet up on the couch. And I'm like, I want to go out. I want to go. And I just realized, it was bad. I would go days without showering.
Yeah,
it's okay.
The
getting
whole
a little
hygiene
TMI, but
a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah. I had this robe. My wife threatened. I won't let her do it, but she's threatened to burn it. So I would do that, where I would just put my robe on, and then I would go to bed at night and take it off, and I'd put it back on the next day.
I would do the same thing, but it was my blanket cape, and so it'd be my blanket cape, and this was before virtual conferencing was really
so you could pull it off.
It was mostly phone calls and maybe sharing your screen, but it wasn't like people were seeing my messy bun and my.
Have you seen the Dilbert cartoon where it's like the evolution of working at home? So for video conference, it's classic. There's 3 frames. It's basically him in a suit and tie, and then him in a suit and tie without pants, and then it like degrades to ultimately it's a puppet of him.
Yeah.
On the other
gosh.
side.
That's like what are the kids saying to me in real life for me in real life? Or
Yeah,
like there's the
totally.
it's like,
Yep.
oh, that hits too close to home.
Yeah, that's right. So you broke out by getting a job. Did you try meetups?
I did a little bit of that. I didn't find my people though. So I think it was, I just needed that.
Have you looked into marketing research or user experience type meetups locally? I'm just curious.
I haven't. I've been doing more women in leadership or women in tech type things than I have been more on the functional side. But
yeah, I mean, the women in there was a thread I responded to on LinkedIn recently, and it was a concern that a leader has. I won't say who it is, but inside of, but it's public, right? Inside of the market research industry, he needs to staff salespeople, and he's frustrated with the lack of female talent that has been coming in, and there's some really, that's where I think we have to be as organizations intentional with how we manage our pipeline, and we can't just look about, I've got a need right now. You've got to start that networking farther, right, more upstream.
Yeah.
If you're going to be able to staff and help support, whether it's gender or some other type of inequality.
Sure, and I have gone to a couple of the Wire Women in Research events too, and I think that's a great organization, especially for finding women talent in this space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Kristen Luck did a great. Now Michelle Andres helping support that, but that's I think the premier women.
It's the only one I know about. Yeah. So they're doing a great job. Yes. Yeah,
but they are quite literally everywhere. Gosh, yeah, and that's like 10 years old or more now. It's amazing. So you've done a lot of research, been involved in research anyway, right?
Yes, analytics, research, Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So what is the project that you're most proud of?
Yeah. So the research that I did at Nielsen was really fascinating. I started my career in marketing mix modeling. So it's almost like the precursor to attribution modeling in a way, and really great for especially big brands who are doing more traditional advertising like TV, print, radio, email, coupons, etc.
And that is identifying the optimal sort of channel spend.
It is. It's identifying the independent contributions or impact of all of your media to sales volume, and then therefore calculating a marketing ROI on all of your campaigns. So you would have a total brand ROI for I was working for Procter and Gamble, so Tide or Crest or Pampers,
very
etc.
B2C,
right.
So consumer products.
But you would then go down to the campaign level and say, okay, this specific commercial that ran during this time had an ROI of X. And so that was really great work. It established the foundation that I would need to go on to more research, to work with CPG firms, to then be a marketer myself.
Yeah.
But the research that I did in my last couple of years there was developing predictive modeling techniques. I'm going to get a little technical too.
Good.
Predictive modeling techniques.
This is a very technical audience.
To assess macro and micro drivers of ROI across all of P&G's brands and markets. So it was essentially taking the output of all of their marketing mix modeling and combining that with other data sources around things like, how long had the brand been around, what country were they in, how fragmented was the category, all of that. So the macro level things with then the micro level things. So things that the brand had a little bit more control of and things that we could measure. So like their copy scores or, their spend levels and all of that. And so what essentially came out of that was a mindset shift where if you're doing marketing on a brand like Tide in the United States, you have a different expectation on the return on that investment than you would a small beauty brand in France.
Got it.
or fragrance brand in France. So they're up against different market
Totally.
factors. And so doing a lot of that work was able to
help set expectations so you're not anchored to this false.
Exactly. And working with the data that we had at Nielsen and the brands in, just
Totally.
spread that they had at P&G, we were able to do that kind of research, which was really cool. It was a finalist in their CMK Insights Awards back in the day. But I'm definitely proud of that because it was new, it was innovative. I'm a little bit more removed from the client research here at SurveyMonkey, although, as I mentioned before, super proud of the work that we do, especially with our contribute panel and giving back and all of that. And then, now in my role in product marketing, I get to do my own research for SurveyMonkey brands and products. So, I just finished up a name test for a new line of products that we're going to be rolling out later this year. We are moving into the realm of more automated research for specific market research use cases.
Got it.
So
fun.
So that it's been a really fun
it's an interesting
journey there.
Space.
It is.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think there's there's been this, I call it the three-legged stool. So you got like brands, and you got agencies, and then you got technologies inside of market research. And the technologies have really been kind of feeding both agencies and brands directly, which is by, definitionally has been kind of like competing with agencies to some degree, right? Because of the fact that an agency all of a sudden can do certain types of projects as opposed to spend $50,000 with an agency to do that same sort of thing.
We find that to be true. When we were doing some research earlier this year, and we find a lot more insights are being brought in-house at brands. And so,
I've seen that with both, like there's, I'm not suggesting where we are in the global economic cycle, right? I'm not that smart, but historically what I've seen back in 89 and 90 and then 2000 were because brands had so much money, they were bringing that function in-house. And then, once there was a major correction, then they moved to a different framework where it's better off kind of like getting the expense structure off the P&L and then moving more towards, the ad hoc, even though it's more expensive. They weren't penalized as much. So it's going to be interesting as this whole, they've got coming into another election cycle, right? There's just a million different things that are taking place right now for us. And it's nice, I think, as a technologist to be able to sit there and as long as you are providing value for everybody, then you're poised to win.